problems. Comcast has removed that time for us, and we're now on from 3:30 to 4:30 on Friday afternoon. Now, granted that that's a little inconvenient for those people who used to watch it at 8:30, but if you have a computer, you can check the internet when we're on 24 hours a day with this show at flinttalk.com, flinttalk.com. So, you can watch it at your own leisure if you miss this program. Now, next week, which will be the 19th, we'll have a rebroadcast of a show we did on the 26th of November with Tom Pabst, who is a local attorney and one of the experts in the area of employer-employee relationship law. And he'll be discussing the impact of the new affirmative action constitutional amendment that was passed recently and how it impacts the admissions into school and the contracts with businesses and government. And he'll also show the distinction that has with the law against violating employees' rights by discriminating against them in any way because of race, religion, color, or what have you. He's very knowledgeable in this area. It'll be talking about employment law and what your rights are, and most of the people I'm sure out there watching recognize that they are employees, and they probably should hear this program so they know what their rights are when they're employed. Now, tonight, we want to talk to you about Genesee County's newest, as it's referred to by some people, its newest banana republic, and what these elected officials and appointed officials did to get this designation for their community. We'll be talking about that, and then we want to talk about the new curfew laws, ordinances passed by the city council. Is this just a political PR gimmick, or are they really needed? Don't we have state laws covering this? What do we need more laws for? And we want to also discuss the kind of the duplicitousness of the Flint City Council in dealing with their allegations against the mayor and now the city attorney, and doing nothing about one of their own who has admitted to acts of criminal extortion. We'll look at the reaction somewhat last night at the city council's meeting on this issue. And then, you have to ask yourselves, when you think of the soft landing the feds gave Jackie Poplar, who is the city councilman who is alleged to have extorted money from a couple of store owners to get them, or to allow them to have liquor licenses for their party stores. She got a soft landing by just, all she had to do was write a letter of apology, and she was let go. Now, like I said, I know Jackie Poplar. I really kind of like the woman, and I don't think she should be going to jail, but they should handle this case in the regular course of business. If she's done this, then they should require that there be a plea of guilty on the charge, and probably she should be put on probation. And, then the question of whether she should stay on the council or not, it should be up to her and the city council and the city, the people of the city of Flint. And then I want to mention to you, too, that this coming week, or maybe the beginning of next week, the prosecuting attorney has told me that he will be issuing a warrant against Lucas Anthony. He's the pedophile hired by the Flint Board of Education, and I'm told that he will be charged with a felony crime. Well, we'll just have to wait and see her. They know where he is, and they've indicated that they will extradite him if he doesn't come back voluntarily. And here's another case that I'm sure is troubling. Another soft landing for this fellow. Here's the story. Closing up. Photographer to plead guilty, shut down website. This is a fellow who was charged, or who was arrested for possession of child porn. He has a history of pictures like this. And then his name is Robert Lamb, and according to the Journal, Lamb has been arrested on charges of producing child pornography in 1986. In that case, police said Lamb had sex with boys in videos, young boys performing sex acts. He pleaded guilty in 1988 to third-degree criminal sexual conduct involving a teenager between the ages of 13 and 15 and was sentenced to a year in jail and 5 years probation. Now, this guy was charged with something like 22 or 23 counts of possession of child porn, and he was allowed to plead guilty to one 4-year felony, and then it was a follow-up with a 2-year on top of that, so that he had 6 years the maximum penalty. Now, some people say, man, this guy was charged with 20-year felonies, you let him plead to a 6-year charge? There's a lot more behind the scenes on this, and we know what it is. And we'll discuss it after the sentencing of this individual in court. So just take my word for it that the prosecutor's office has done the appropriate thing under these circumstances. And now we really want to do something and say something about Burton Mayor Charles Smiley's phony criminal complaint he filed against Burton City Council President Charles Cross. It's been summarily thrown out of court. Now the question is, where does Mr. Cross go to get his reputation back, which may have been permanently tarnished by Smiley's phony false accusations? You know, it's really unfortunate that would happen, and Smiley just walks away from it. And then we'll be talking about, hopefully enough time to talk about the ambulance situation here in Genesee County. Has the problems been corrected? And I say they haven't been. And then what's behind the newest confrontation between Flint Mayor Don Williamson and the Flint Police Department? Has he really thrown out his reorganization plan as he agreed to do in a federally sponsored memo of understanding that he signed about a month ago? The cops say he's reneged on his agreement, and that's why they're bringing an unfair labor practice to him. We'll look at that and see what we're going on. But first, let's go to this issue of the so-called Banana Republic. We're talking about Argentine Township out there in the southwest part of Genesee County. And, they're in the news again, and it's not always for the best reasons. I say again because they're politicians out there never seem to get out of the limelight. It's counter recall after a recall, counter allegations after allegations of political corruption seem to never end. Now here's the latest, as described by Channel 12 or 66 this past week. Can you play that, please?
Video Mara, tonight the revealing details about an investigation that has left one officer suspended and a small town questioning whether a crime was committed. TV5's Lori Jane Gliha live in our newsroom with more. Lori Jane.
Katie, this all comes down to whether a police officer actually did something wrong and how the township board and how the police chief are investigating it. A traffic stop several months ago in Argentine Township seems to have sparked a bit of friction between the police chief and the township board.
I wish that they could pull together to accomplish more.
The ongoing feud is nothing new, says Holly Gall. She's lived in the township for 20 years, and this time the friction started when a woman accused an officer of allowing her to show her breasts to him. In exchange, he'd let her friend facing a misdemeanor warrant get off the hook. The alleged incident led the chief to investigate the officer, and when the officer tried to resign, the township board refused to accept it. Instead, they voted to put him on administrative leave. TV5 could not reach the chief tonight, but his attorney tells us the chief wanted to pursue the investigation a little bit further. As a result, he felt the board targeted him and started harassing him by, quote, micromanaging everything he did. That's when the chief filed a lawsuit against the board.
I wish that everything could work cohesively.
A few township residents say they've been in the dark about the intricacies of the turmoil, but watching the government at odds is frustrating. Some wonder whether it will ever go away.
Personal agendas should always be put aside for the good of the community.
And tonight I left several messages for the township supervisor, but I have not heard back from him yet. I also was not able to get a hold of any of the other township board members or the trustees. Live in the Genesee County newsroom, Lori Jane Glehot, WNEM TV5 News on Fox 66.
All right, Lori Jane, thank you. The officer who tried to resign is still on paid administrative leave. At least one source tells TV5 that officer has written a letter to the board retracting his original letter of resignation.
Now, here's the first story that appeared in the Journal last Wednesday, and it says, Layton, that's the prosecutor, bearing no crime. And I guess that's supposed to be a clever way of saying that the bearing of the woman's breasts to the police officer after he suggested she show him why he shouldn't arrest her cousin. Layton says there is no corruption or there is no extortion in this case. I'm not so sure I agree with him, but we'll go on with this. I want to. Then we have a story that appeared on Thursday in the Flint Journal, and it says Township Clerk seeks reinstatement of suspended cop. And yeah, this was Thursday. And you know, what seems to be running throughout this thing, in the first story, it said that the police chief was told not to bring his police report into this matter about this woman's allegation against this police officer, or he'd be fired. Now, if that's true, such a threat under these circumstances could easily be interpreted as an obstruction of justice. Now, in this particular case, on this second article here, it says that the Argentine Township Board will have a meeting on the 18th on whether or not to reinstate this guy. It seems to me, you know, the question is, the Journal in their editorial here makes this out as a he said, she said type of thing. They say traffic stops, crime may lack a useful safeguard for police and motorists. And it says, where's the crime, asked Genesee County David Layton in Wednesday's Flint Journal. And jaws must have dropped. Surely it was somewhere in this tale of an Argentine Township police officer allegedly inviting a motorist to bare her breasts to resolve a 2 a.m. traffic stop in July. An incident that, like that would be too sordid and troubling, too wrong to be lawful, wouldn't it? Yes, Layton says he agrees. More on that later. Now, what Layton says in this article that he apparently later denies says that the fact that he didn't arrest this guy when he knew there was a warrant for his arrest after the woman exposed her breast to him, that was clearly a willful neglect of duty. He should have done that. But anyway, you see, this clerk now wants to get him reinstated. There's clearly, in my opinion, a mammoth cover-up going on out there to protect this guy at the expense of women. Now, this township clerk seems to be ignoring the realities of this case, which is, it seems to me, women beware when driving through Argentine Township. You know, the Journal editorial Sunday was quite revealing as to the lack of understanding, the confusion on their part that this case revolves around he said, she said thing. You know, in criminal law, even with independent eyewitnesses to a crime, corroboration of the eyewitness's description of events, or even the injured party's description, is usually substantiated by circumstantial evidence. Now, if you're a juror in this case, here's how it would set up to be presented to you on the issue of whether the woman is telling the truth. Now, the question is, if she's telling the truth, the next step is, was there a crime? Now, in this article, Layton does indicate that he says now that his "where's the crime" quote, which came out of a blanket statement, was meant to rule out extortion, more serious charge than entails a threat of injury to a victim or close family member. Then he says that he could be guilty of willful neglect of duty for not arresting this person. But let's assume you're sitting there as a juror, and this woman comes in and tells her story, and the cop now comes in the case and says, no, he didn't do that, and he didn't say those things. Is there circumstances around this case which would support her position or his position? Well, let's look at some of the circumstances that might support her story. The chief would testify he believes this woman. That's why he was proceeding with the case. And then there's no denial by the cop according to the Journal story. He doesn't deny this. The cop submits his resignation without much resistance, apparently. Now, here's another thing. The cop puts the subject in the police car after the cop learns he's wanted on a police warrant. It's already been issued. His job is to arrest him based on that warrant that's in existence. But he doesn't do that. He leaves the individual in the cop's car, goes to the private car where the woman is waiting, and then she says, please don't arrest my cousin, who's the fellow that was driving the car. He apparently went through a stop sign. Now, at this time, the cop, according to the woman, asked her to show or give him two good reasons why he should not arrest her cousin. Now, in other words, it was kind of a quid pro quo, as the Journal put it, flash of flesh. I like to refer to it as a tit for tat. Well, she flashes her breasts, and he says, okay, and he goes back, and he doesn't give the ticket, and he lets her cousin go without arresting him on the warrant. Then we look at the fact that the chief had this report that apparently was more incriminating to the cop, and he wants to take it to the prosecuting attorney's office. And he's told, if you do that or you try to do that, you're going to get fired, or words to that effect. Well, they said they could fire him. They hire him and they fire him if he doesn't do what he's told. Clearly a cover-up. The officials out there, those who are involved in it, are covering it up with the cop. Now, these circumstances, in my opinion, clearly support the woman's description of events. Now, in face of all this evidence, the officials on the township board are trying to cover up the cop's wrongdoing by trying to make the chief of police the heavy in this dispute. I mean, clearly the fix is in my mind. And I think there's been a number of crimes committed. Now, Prosecutor Layton says he doesn't agree, and he's not going to issue a warrant. And, I think there clearly is a willful neglect of duty by refusing to arrest this guy when he knows a warrant is in existence, doesn't give him a ticket. The question of extortion has to do, according to Layton, with threats to do harm or to force or what have you. And the question is, and when you look at the law, the issue of force doesn't have to be physical force. It can be coercion or collusion, whatever the case may be, that forces somebody to act in a manner they wouldn't act if they were not threatened or coerced into doing something, as they say they wouldn't do. Now, here's a letter that was sent to the Township Board explaining Layton's position on the issues of crimes, which I've described to you here. He says he doesn't think there was any crimes committed. I respectfully disagree with him. But he does say this to the board. This letter was written December 8th. In the final paragraph, he says, it is extremely important for you to know that my decision that criminal charges are not appropriate in this instance in no way justifies the conduct alleged. The allegations describe behavior that is highly inappropriate, wrong, unbecoming of a police officer, and abhorrent. I do not condone the alleged behavior. If the conduct allegedly actually occurred, the officer is unfit for duty. Well, that's pretty strong. What's going to happen out there? What will these officials do? Well, they'll argue a while, that's their history, and they'll do things that they probably shouldn't do if they put this guy back on the road. This is why it has the reputation of being a banana republic. To hell with the law. In this case, to hell with women who might be stopped by this cop. That's the way it looks now. Here's the second tit-for-tat case that came up this week that needs real examination. Here's Channel 12's report last night on this particular case. Can you play that, please?
The Flint attorney finds herself on the other side of the law. Good evening, everyone. I'm Angie Hendershot.
And I'm Bill Harris. Shannon Pitcher has been charged with 4 counts of embezzlement. Authorities say she stole money from vulnerable clients who the court appointed to be their guardian or as a conservator. ABC 12's Taryn Asher live in the newsroom with details tonight. Taryn.
Bill, investigators say over the last 5 years, Shannon Pitcher stole nearly $500,000 from different clients. Much of the money is unaccounted for, and some, ABC 12 has learned, Pitcher buried in different backyards.
Shackled and in tears, attorney Shannon Pitcher faced a judge Monday who charged her with 4 counts of embezzlement. Investigators started looking into Pitcher's actions in October when attorney Margaret Brandenburg noticed the accounting on one of her client's father's estate didn't add up.
She had filed several different accountings and had amended them several times, and none of the figures would balance.
Brandenburg claims Pitcher never provided the records she needed, and Pitcher was eventually held in contempt of court and jailed. Months later, investigators estimate as his conservator, Pitcher stole $286,000 from Alvin Britton, who died last year at the age of 91. Authorities say Pitcher made most of her money by diverting funds from defenseless people.
She was supposed to be making life-caring decisions, and what she really did in effect was she gave them the bare necessities to fill her own coffers.
But authorities say she also stole from the young. Pitcher was put in charge of nearly $100,000. Dominique Hightower's mother left him when she died 3 years ago.
I wasn't worried about that right about then. I was worried about, I lost my mother,
Dominique says when he turned 18, Pitcher only gave him half of the money his mother left him for college and his future.
I'm angry with her. because she kept some of my money, and I'm supposed to have like a whole lot more than what I had.
Authorities suspect there are several more victims in this case that is still under investigation.
Number of additional victims that we haven't talked to yet or looked into, but we know are out there based upon the numbers of checkbooks that were sitting in her office. Is there much?
Prosecutor David Layton did notify the State Attorney Grievance Commission about the allegations against Pitcher, but it was Judge Perry who today banned her from practicing law. Live in the newsroom, Tara Nasher.
Here's the Journal paper today, the headlines, the front page, lawyer charged. Now, here's the thing here. Some are asking, where did the money go? You know, they found some, according to the paper and according to David Layton. They found near $100,000 buried in her backyard. And I might say this to you, that one of the things that we've learned is she spent it on various things, you know, to enhance her life. She has, you know, it's pretty clear from the evidence we have that she bought herself a new boob job during this time using these people's money. She's driving a new Jaguar automobile around that costs over $100,000. She just lived a good life while her wards were just scraping by. You know, this alleged theft was going on for 5 years. Why did it take so long to uncover? This question deserves a full investigation. Now, Judge Jenny Barkey, along with this attorney, Ms. Brodenberg, I think was her name, began looking into some strange happenings with these cases. Jenny Barkey, in one instance with this woman, demanded an accounting, and she got nasty in the courtroom, and she had to find her in contempt and send her over to the jail. Now, well, you can understand why she didn't want to disclose any accounting, because she was stealing the money. She couldn't account for all the money missing. Now, they say at this time they've got about $500,000 in the number of cases that she was handling that are missing. And there may be a lot more. They say they have at least 10 more in Genesee County they're looking at, and the amount of money stolen could go up to $1 million. You know, how can that happen in this day and age? Where was the checks and balances here? Somebody ought to find that out. And, you know, there's not suggesting anybody in particular, but somebody should find out whether or not it was intentional or there was collusion here. You know, I don't see that, but somebody ought to find it out. And if there's a breakdown in the system where the checks and balances are bad, they better redo them. Now, here's another case. I'd be remiss if I didn't point out the newest example of the Flint City Council's duplicitousness. In this new example, here we have probably the second most vocal obstructionist against the Mayor Williamson and his administration, Sheldon Neely, proposing a resolution now to authorize a hearing to forfeit the city attorney Trishelle Young's job. You know, they did it to the mayor, and they said it to the attorney general. Okay, that's all right. They've done that. They had a hearing. There were some questions legitimately raised, but in this case, you have to wonder. Here's the resolution that apparently has been held up for some reason, but we got a copy of it. It says, whereas the legal officer for the city of Flint has sued the Flint City Council and served as legal counsel on behalf of the mayor of the city of Flint, and has displayed, this is the argument, displayed outright public disgust at individual council members as well as councils as a whole, has taken numerous adverse positions contrary to the desire and wishes of the city council in both council proceedings and court proceedings. You know, public outright disgust? How do you answer that? And then it says, Whereas the city legal officer of the City of Flint has failed to properly advise the administration of charter violations or enforcing administration to abide by Flint City Charter. You got to tell the person what you're charging them with. What specific charter violations is he referring to? And then it goes on, whereas the city legal officer of the City of Flint has failed to enforce the city ordinances adopted by the Flint City Council. What is he talking about? Give us the numbers so that the person can defend it. Whereas the chief legal officer of the City of Flint has failed to safeguard the City of Flint from actions that resulted in lawsuits. You know, if there's specifics, give it to him. Then he adds this, whereas the chief legal officer of the City of Flint has been alleged to have violated the Flint City Charter in a number of ways, any one which may be punishable by forfeiture. Come on, what the hell is he saying? That's how stupid that is. That's how outrageous it is. And the city attorney, kind of in her response, says the Council Sheldon Neely intends to ask the Flint City Council approval of a resolution authorizing the setting of a public hearing on Wednesday, January 10th, 2007 at 5:30 p.m. to determine if cause exists for forfeiture of Trishelle Young, Chief Legal Officer of the City of Flint. And then it goes on to say whether the appointee lacks any of the qualifications required by the city charter. This is the only way you can forfeit. A, whether the appointee lacks any time, at any time, any qualifications required by law or this charter. She's, a licensed lawyer, so she has the qualifications. Whether the appointee violates any provisions of this charter, punishable by forfeiture, and that's not listed. Nobody in his statement of requesting a hearing, he doesn't indicate what she's violated, if anything. Whether the appointee has been convicted of a felony while holding office or appointment. Well, she hasn't. So she can't answer it. In all fairness, you have to give something definitive to the person so they know what they're defending. There's none in this particular case, and it's another example of harassing an official of the mayor. Whether the mayor deserves a kick in the tail or not, if the other officer, in this case the appointed city attorney of the mayor, has done nothing, why pick on her? Well, we'll see what happens to that. It's supposed to be January 10th. And I think that we will be looking at as time goes by in the next month or so. But here's another thing. Here's another example of a waste of taxpayers' money, in my mind, by Mr. Neely. He has come up with two ordinances that concerns curfews and daytime curfews at that, and truancy provisions. Let me read something to you. Well, we'll first show that tape, will you, please?
Councilman Sheldon Neely is sponsoring a truancy ordinance that imposes a daytime curfew for all school-aged kids. Now, it also gives police the authority to pick up truant students right off the streets. ABC 12's Don Jones live in the studio with more on this proposed legislation. Don.
Well, Bill, Councilman Neely says his truancy ordinance is just one way the city is trying to help the school district get kids off the streets and into the classrooms. Connie Rao works with parents and students who have fallen into the trap of truant behavior.
We have students from Flushing and Beecher and Kersley and Perro, and that it's a countywide problem. It's not simply a Flint problem.
Flint Councilman Sheldon Neely wants to get tough on truancy in the city. He's introducing a truant ordinance that will impose a daytime curfew for all students.
Well, if a kid is outside of school, a school building in a public area during school hours, the police have the ability to question that minor
and make an assessment if that kid is in violation of this truancy ordinance, then by taking the kid back to school or booking them into a correction facility for that particular time period.
We asked Connie Rao what she thought of Neely's plan.
I think it's a piece of the puzzle, because it is a gigantic mosaic or a puzzle, and there's a variety of pieces that does indeed have a place.
Under Neely's ordinance, parents could face charges.
They contribute to the delinquency by not making sure that that child is in school. And sometimes parents can't do everything, but parents need to be accountable.
Councilman Neely will introduce the ordinance tonight in committee meetings at City Council. He says public comment on the ordinance will be heard at next Monday's council meeting. In the studio, Dawn Jones, ABC 12 News.
Now here's what the state statute says. School attendance at a public school is mandatory for students between the ages of 6 and 16. In other words, when you get to 16, you can leave school, you can quit, whether you graduate or not, unless other qualified educational arrangements are made. That's for, homeschooling and things like that. So anyway, at 16, you're out of school if you want. You can quit. Now, under this law, a truancy ordinance that he proposes, he says that if you are under 17 and not in school, you can be arrested. And he wants the police to arrest him. That violates the state law. This young person, if he's on the streets and he's 16 years old and one day, he can be arrested under Neely's provision, under Neely's suggested ordinance that incidentally was passed last night. So a youngster can be between 16 and 17, be on the streets legally. He's quit school, whatever the reason he's on the streets. He's not graduated. He doesn't have to be in school under state law. Neely wants him arrested. Now, I'm telling you, if they do that, they will have nothing but all kinds of lawsuits against the city of Flint. Plus, it's really unconstitutional. Let me ask you, don't the police have better things to be doing? It's crazy. They got murders, robberies, rapes going on, sexual assaults, and he wants them chasing around kids who might be walking down the street, who may not be violating any law. And keep in mind that the state law takes precedence over a local law. The state law says you do not have to go to school after you reach your 16th birthday. Neely wants to arrest you if you're between 16 and 17 and you're on the street, even though you're there legally. That's ridiculous. Then he goes on, and his new law on daytime curfew. Listen to this. Now, this is daytime curfew. We were talking about truancy there, kids not being in school at a certain time between 9 and 2. They could be arrested by the police for truancy, and then I explained to you, but he says under 17, which means the 16-year-olds between 16 and 17 could be arrested in violation of state law. State law says you can quit at 16. Now, here's his newest one. Listen to this one. This has to do with daytime curfew. No minor under the age of 17 years shall loiter, idle, congregate, or be in or on any public street, highway, alley, park, or public place between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m., except where a minor is accompanied by a parent, a guardian, or an adult designated. Now, wait a minute. He doesn't say except when it's summer or holidays or what have you. Here's kids who are 16, 15 years old in the summer, can't even go on the streets according to this ordinance without getting arrested if they do it before 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, this is crazy. Kids are playing in baseball leagues, they're playing basketball, they're even playing golf in the inner city golf program that's set up by this guy. Does that mean the kids that want to play golf in his tournament can't walk from their homes to the golf course without a parent in the summertime? This is ridiculous. But he got a little press. Channel 12 gave him a little press for it. That's what it's all about. And it wastes your money, and it wastes our time. The police obviously have more important things to be doing than chasing some kids around and looking at their watch to determine whether they should arrest them or not. That's what they had. The schools in the area of truancy, the schools have truant officers for that purpose. They should deal with the problem. That's what the state says. Well, anyway, let me just go on here for a moment. To go back for a moment, this is another example of trying to forfeit in the Trishelle Young's case. And another official's job by the city council person, here's Shelton Neely, where they do nothing about one of their own who is admitted to an act of extortion. I have reference to Jackie Poplar. I mean, either you go after everybody they claim is guilty of wrongdoing and should forfeit their office, or they should not go after any of them. Where's the consistency here? Failure to address this wrongdoing of one of their cohorts, the city councilman from the 2nd Ward, while going after their political enemies, the mayor and in this case the city attorney Trishelle Young, clearly demonstrates the council's duplicitousness and diminishes the council's credibility. Especially in the charges they've made against the mayor. These charges against Trishelle Young shouldn't get off the ground. Hopefully, cooler heads will prevail. There's some of those people on there aren't stupid. Kincaid, Annernick, Gonzalez, Hill, 3rd Ward Councilman Nelson. Hopefully they'll see the holes in this approach, what it does to their credibility. Now, one of the things that Donna Poplar kept saying, that she didn't know what she was doing was wrong. And in last week's paper, right after she made these statements, or I should say Tuesday's paper, City Councilwoman Sandy Hill said Monday that she too thinks embattled fellow Councilwoman Jackie Poplar should step down, and said she warned Poplar her actions were illegal. Poplar publicly apologized Friday for coercing business to donate to her scholarship fund in exchange for her approving the transfer of the liquor license. She made the apology in an agreement with the U.S. Attorney's Office to avoid facing criminal charges. And then this is Hill saying she should gracefully bow out and step down. She was warned. She was told, according to Hill. And Poplar says that the city attorney approved the scholarship forms. Well, who knows whether they did, but that has nothing to do. I'm sure the city attorney, looking at a scholarship form, doesn't say, we're going to use that money that I extort from somebody to pay for those scholarships. I'm sure the city attorney would never approve that. But she tries to move it off the issue into the city attorney. Now, last night, everybody at the city council meeting was blaming everybody for Jackie Poplar's problems except Jackie Poplar. They were blaming the mayor, they were blaming the city council, they were blaming the city attorney, everybody. And it became very nasty last night. Very nasty. And, that city council, those city council meetings are just out of control down there. Somebody's going to get hurt. Well, anyway, here's some of the... Can you play a little of that city council meeting from last night, please?
From Flint Mayor Don Williamson's newly created Citizen Service Bureau. Last week, the mayor promoted 5 police officers to the division in an effort to, he says, beef up the police force. All police unions, all 3 of them, have lashed out against the move. And tonight, members of Flint City Council sharing similar concerns. ABC 12's BC O'Leary at tonight's council meeting joins us in the newsroom with more. BC.
Bill, when Mayor Williamson made the appointments, he gave special thanks to City Council President Darrell Buchanan for his help in forming the Bureau. This made many council members uneasy. This is the first city council meeting since Mayor Don Williamson appointed 5 police officers to form the Flint Police Citizen Service Bureau. 2 of the 3 police unions have filed grievances against the administration. Now some are taking their concerns to council.
We haven't even been consulted through all this. We've not received one phone call from anybody to meet on this, to discuss this.
After Officer Carl Petrick took the floor, it was council's turn. Carolyn Sims was the first member to speak out on the issue, but her first complaint wasn't directed toward the administration, but Council President Darrell Buchanan, who was praised by the mayor for helping form the Bureau.
And some people don't like what I do, but let them come up with some suggestions instead of whining and crying all the time. Come up with some suggestions.
Then the discussion turned heated.
You're doing the same thing. You're fighting for the same thing you've been doing since the 80s, but it's the same old thing. Y'all still slapping us in the face, and you gotta give me the one.
I don't care if you're the mayor. I don't care if you're the council president. I don't care if you're a council person. You do not negotiate the terms or changes of a contract without the elected leaders of the representatives of the people they represent being at the table.
One council member said this issue will likely come up again. Meantime, the mayor is expected to introduce the promoted officers tomorrow. In the newsroom, BC O'Leary.
Right here, Jackie Poplar, and again, I'm surprised that she does this because that was not my impression of her. Use the N-word when referring to a white council member. Now, it says here at the end of the meeting, Poplar apologized for saying the racial slur that she alleges Hill used. There's no evidence Hill ever used it. And for her to use it at a council meeting, I feel is just unacceptable. You know, it's really outrageous for what's going on down there. Now the police and the mayor are fighting again, and the question is, what's it all about? Apparently, what's happening here is that the mayor has established a new inspector division in his police department, and some of the police officers, maybe rightfully so, say that results in them, these people who are being given these inspectors' jobs, jumping over them. Some of them weren't even sergeants, and jumping over the sergeants and maybe even the lieutenants in pay and in rank and what have you. And they say that violates this memo of agreement that they had with the mayor that was sponsored by the federal government here about a month ago. You remember that. Play that tape, will you, please?
12 News. The ongoing feud between the city of Flint and its police officers tops our news tonight, and we tell you that it reaches a new level.
Just weeks after the union drops a lawsuit against Mayor Don Williamson, tension is mounting again, this time over the mayor's newly created Citizen Service Bureau. Williamson made 5 appointments to fill the positions. Officer John Keehee will serve as major of the Bureau, and officers Connie Johnson, David Dix, Jermaine Reese, and Ralph Tedford have been tapped to be inspectors. Tonight, all 3 unions are firing back. ABC 12's BC O'Leary joining us live from outside Flint Police Headquarters with details. BC?
Angie, the inspectors will spend their entire shifts patrolling the streets and answering 911 calls. But union leaders say the mayor's plan violates union practices. And if it comes down to it, they'll go to court.
The Flint Police Union reached a compromise over Mayor Don Williamson's controversial 26-point restructuring plan in November. Less than a month later, they're at odds again.
As a result of this administration's knee-jerk reaction, we stand before you united.
These 5 officers have been appointed by the mayor to create the Citizen Service Bureau, and the police unions are none too pleased. All 3 union leaders and their membership met behind closed doors to discuss their actions against the mayor's latest attempt to beef up the force.
These appointments have been made without the knowledge and or consent of any of the police unions. There was no application process, there was no testing process, and no list was promulgated from which these choices were made.
Leaders say violations were made and not all members were eligible for appointment.
It is inappropriate to leapfrog these supervisory officers without due regard for their positions, and it cheapens the rank they have achieved.
The mayor first unveiled the plan as a new Flint Police Command structure Thursday in a press release. Police Chief Gary Hagler stating the new bureau will only have authority within its division. Still, the union is calling it an assault on everything they stand for.
We've all filed grievances. I don't know if there may be a lawsuit coming down the road, class action. We're not sure, but we're going to get moving on this pretty quick.
In addition to filing those grievances, the unions also plan to file an unfair labor practice claim against the city. The mayor has not disclosed when all these changes take effect. Reporting live in Flint, I'm BC O'Neill, ABC 12 News.
Well, here the allegations are the mayor has broken his promise to abide by the memo of understanding that was, as I said, sponsored by the federal government. And they entered into it about a month ago. You remember it, we broke it here on this program. And it said that he, as indicated in this tape, that he would not implement that 26-point program. Now, their feeling is this new inspector division he set up is an effort to circumvent that promise. And they say that it violates not only the memo of understanding, but also the union contract. These people are arguing that, who knows, they may be right. There's been an unfair labor practice charge apparently been made, and we'll just have to wait and see. I think the officers entered into this memo in good faith, and they feel that they've been shortchanged on it. And who knows? Let's see what happens here. Now, here's one of the most ridiculous arguments I've ever heard since I've been doing this program. It involves the quick thinking of a sheriff deputy and getting a wounded officer to a hospital in his paramedic car in 2 minutes in the midst of a shootout, and not waiting for an ambulance that was not available in the first place. And even if there was an ambulance available, local protocol prohibits them from entering shooting zones where this officer lay wounded. If you can imagine this, the officer was reprimanded for his action by the Genesee County Medical Control Authority because he didn't wait for an ambulance that wasn't there and couldn't have gone into the zone. Can you play that tape for me, please?
It happened October 9th at a Flint Township apartment complex. Edward Campbell shot his own son and 2 officers before being fatally shot by police. Deputy Casey Tafoya took one of the wounded officers to the hospital in his own vehicle, a violation of state and local regulations. Well, now Sheriff Robert Pickell is defending Tafoya, encouraging other paramedics under similar circumstances to do the same.
Because what's going to happen the next time? I can't have my young deputies pulling into an area that may be under hostile fire and second-guessing themselves. And I told all of them, in that situation, do the same thing and I'll back and support you.
No punishment is expected for the deputy. Tonight, police...
Can you imagine, this is the organization, the Genesee County Medical Control Board, that reprimanded this officer, that allowed ambulance companies to ignore their commitment to provide ambulance spaces throughout the county to guarantee life-saving responses to our citizens who are in need of quick hospital attention, often a life and death situation. This dereliction was discovered by this program and by Ron Fogger, the fine investigative reporter for the Flint Journal, who during his investigation found many of these bases that were supposed to be open to save people's lives were unmanned and even closed down. Even today, many of these bases remain shuttered. This jeopardizes the health and safety of our citizens, obviously. At no time, listen to this, has any of these ambulance companies that were supposed to keep these bases open to save lives, have they been reprimanded for putting the public at risk? Well, at the same time, we have this case of the sheriff's deputy who was acting to save lives being reprimanded. Figure that out if you can. Bruce Trivitek, he was the executive director of the medical control, said in the Flint Journal the deputy's action was wrong in getting this wounded officer to the hospital in 2 minutes, even if there was no ambulance available. This is stinking thinking. Incidentally, this week, Charlie Cross, the executive or the council president of the city of Burton, was found. The case was dismissed. It was ridiculous. And like I said, where does he go now to get his reputation? Smiley pushed that thing for talking to some of the people in his administrative office, asking for certain information, records that he needed for a council meeting, and they arrested him. The case was dismissed, and I congratulate Judge Hughes, who's a friend of Smiley's, but did the right thing and abided by the law. Let's see what happens now. I wonder if Smiley will apologize for having this man arrested for nothing but because he was a political opponent. We'll see you next year. In the meantime, happy holiday, and we will be at the White Horse. Hope to see you there.